All right, now we are now moving on to special right triangles. So for most of you, this actually is probably a new topic, except for the fact that you did an introduction yesterday. So hopefully you really did do the introduction yesterday, because this is, you have to memorize these patterns. So you have to realize that on a 45, 45, 90 right triangle, well, it's an isosceles triangle, so the two legs always have the same measure. We can call that x, we can call that a, it doesn't matter what we call it, they're just always the same. And then the hypotenuse, using Pythagorean theorem, you get x root 2. So the thing is, you don't have to do Pythagorean theorem, we can just look at the pattern and realize to get from the leg to the hypotenuse, you multiply by root 2. To get from the hypotenuse to the leg, you divide by root 2. And that comes from the fact that this is a 1, and a root 2, so that's what we looked at yesterday. But using similar triangles, we multiplied all these three sides by the same number x, and that gives us this general triangle that we can use for any leg, not just a leg of length 1. The 30, 60, 90 right triangle, well, yesterday we noticed that if it has a short leg of 1, the long leg is root 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. Notice the short leg is opposite the 30-degree angle. The long leg is opposite the 60-degree angle. But again, if we multiply all of these by the same number x, using similar triangles, you get this general pattern of x, x root 3, and 2x. So everything's based off the short leg. If you multiply the short leg by root 3, you get the long leg. If you divide the long leg by root 3, you get the short leg. If you multiply the short leg by 2, you get the hypotenuse. If you divide the hypotenuse by 2, you get the short leg. So we're going to use those patterns to solve these problems. So example 1, find the missing sides. Just leave the answers in radical form. Don't worry about, trying to simplify, just leave them in radical form. I don't want decimals. All right, so here we have the first key is to realize we have a 45, 45, 90. So that's this triangle right here. And the legs are always the same. So if this is 7 root 2 over 2, this leg is also 7 root 2 over 2. So that's the easier part. Now, to get from the leg to the hypotenuse, you have to multiply by root 2. So I'm going to take the leg, and I'm going to multiply by root 2. Well, root 2 times root 2 is just 2. The square root of 4 is 2. So we get 7 times 2 over 2, which is just 7. So the hypotenuse has a length of 7. The other leg has a length of 7 root 2 over 2. All right, so example 2, we now have this 30-degree angle. So we're now using this pattern. Okay, and we're calling the short leg y and the hypotenuse x. So I have the long leg is 3 root 6. So if we look here, to get from the long leg to the short leg, you have to divide by root 3. So I'm taking the long leg, 3 root 6, and dividing by root 3. If both numbers are under the radical, you can go ahead and divide them. So root 6 divided by root 3 is equal to root 2. So y is 3 root 2. Then, to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, you have to multiply by 2. So now that I have the short leg, if I multiply that by 2, I get the hypotenuse. And the 3 and the 2 are both not under the square root, so I can just go ahead and multiply them. So 3 times 2, so I get 6 root 2 is the hypotenuse. All right, so examples 3 and 4, we're doing the same thing, except we're given 2 attached triangles. So we have to work our way from one triangle onto the other triangle. So I'm going to start with this triangle, because I have the hypotenuse is 7 root 3. So I'm just going to label these A and B, just so I have something to work with. So in the 45, 45, 90 right triangle, to get from the hypotenuse to the leg, you have to divide by root 2. So B is going to be 7 root 3 over root 2. And I'm just going to leave it like that. We're not worrying about rationalizing or anything like that. If you've learned that in a different class and you want to rationalize it, you're welcome to, but I'm not requiring it. So now I have B. So now I'm going to look at the 30, 60, 90 right triangle, and I have the hypotenuse. So again, to get from the hypotenuse to the short leg, I have to divide by 2. So A is 7 root 3 over root 2 divided by 2, which just equals 7 root 3 over 2 root 2. Then to get from the short leg to the long leg, I have to multiply by root 3. So I'm going to take my A value and I'm going to multiply it by root 3. Remember, root 3 times root 3 is just 3. The square root of 9 is 3, so this just ends up being 7 times 3, which is 21, over 2 root 2. Alright, last example, example 4. So I have this is 7 root 6. So I'm going to start in this triangle right here, and I'll just label that side A. So again, in a 45, 45, 90, to get from the hypotenuse to the leg, you have to divide by root 2. So 7 root 6 divided by root 2 is 7 root 3. So that means this length right here is 7 root 3. And that is the long leg in the 30, 60, 90 right triangle. So to get from the long leg to the short leg, you have to divide by root 3. So I'm going to take the long leg, 7 root 3, and divide it by root 3. Well, the root 3's cancel, and I'm just left with 7. So the short leg of the right 30, 60, 90 right triangle has a length of 7. And that's it for our special right triangles.